Be on time or?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Forms class today. We are going over Form 28, Part 1. This is going to be condos, purchase and sale agreements. Hopefully you guys got a chance to either check out the recording if you missed Monday's class with Aaron Hafner from Priority Home Lending. He did a really good job going over all the pieces to really what the lenders need and what they can actually assist you guys with when it comes to, buyers buying condos. There's a lot of different lender requirements, and it's really important to make sure you guys, kind of follow his guidelines. And if you missed it, like I said, it's on our YouTube channel. You can jump on there and go check that one out. But let's go ahead and start in today. We did have, Aaron, well, actually, Aaron's gonna be here next week, so he'll be able to kind of like piggyback on a few other things. As far as like, going over the other pieces that he can, which will be good to have him in the class, but he would have loved to have been here today too. But unfortunately, he's in a training session yesterday and today and tomorrow. So let me share my screen. And let me hide this thing. All right, so condominium, real estate purchase and sale contract. General comments, use this form, right? Use this form should be used for the sale of a condominium. Use other Northwest MLS forms for a house, that'd be Form 21. Manufactured home on leased land, number 23. Multifamily properties, number 20. Or vacant lot or land, Form 25. So please make sure you use the right forms. How do you know you're going to be using a Form 28?
Yeah, this is a trick question.
How would you know? Let's say it's a property that's not even listed. How will you know that you need to use a Form 28? Just because in your mind, think of a condo. Let's start there. What does that look like, Karen? What's it look like to you?
It's the unit, not the land, maybe.
Okay.
I could draw you other pictures.
Yeah, think of like you're just describing the feature. Like, what does it just physically look like?
It's in a building with other units.
Oh, okay. So it's all attached, right? All right. That's what I mean. You think that's what most people think. Samantha's like, yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Right? What about you, Zoom people? Describe a condo. Don't make me call on you.
Like, yeah, we're waking up here.
I know, they got to.
Attached schedules.
Bad connection, Jim. Cutting in and out. Well, trick question. Realistically, condominiums can be anything. It could be a single family looking home. You cannot tell. The only place you can actually really tell is in the legal description. Always check the legal description of properties and it will tell you if it's condominiumized. If the property's condominiumized, you have to use a Form 28. Why? Why do you have to? I've seen a doozy of a lawsuit I read about.
There's some interesting houses up in Kirkland, because I just had a listing up there
Mhm.
where there are these little condos. They're not little condos, they're little like cottages.
Mhm.
That are, you would think that they would be a house, but they are not. They're condoized.
Yeah.
And it's a whole like community of them. So it's like, I guess when you would get your trio, if you were listing it, you would see what it is.
Mhm.
So then you can use the appropriate form.
Yeah, you have to. This lawsuit, long story short, both of the brokers were inexperienced and knuckleheads pretty much. Because the listing broker just listed it as single family residential. The buyer wrote it up as single family residential. they even included the legal description, but yet nobody really read it. The preliminary title must not have been ordered because it said that it came late. They finally got a copy. Nobody said anything.
What about title and script?
It didn't quite get to this because, so then they're like probably almost 2 weeks in the deal. Title and escrow had been trying to get a hold of the listing broker and said, hey, your deal, you wrote this up on residential. And they said, oh, okay. They didn't do anything about it. Well, the buyer basically refused to change the contract because apparently they couldn't get the funding. They knew that the lending wouldn't lend on it. But with residential, that was their out, right? So they were like, they kind of like didn't care. So it's like these types of things, can come up if nobody pays attention.
So if you are in like a situation where you have one of those interesting like cottages that looks like it's a house.
Yeah.
And maybe the listing broker like listed it inappropriately with the wrong forms, and then you show your client it, and you're just going off of the forms that are on. If you find out after the fact, would you change that with like an addendum and say, for clarification purposes, this is, or would you have to?
You'd have to probably cancel and rewrite it because we're gonna dive into this a little bit more, obviously, but realistically, condominiums are common interest properties. They're commonly owned because of most of the time they're shared, right? Walls and shared, floors and ceilings and stuff. They're adjoined, but they don't have to be, right? And that is where it gets confusing. But they are by law required to have a resale certificate or a public offering statement if the property's brand new. They have to have one. They can't not get one. So they can't waive a right to even not get one. And the reason being is because condominiums have high costs sometimes, especially when there's assessments. What am I paying for? What am I do? They have to have complete transparency in the transaction. The only way to do it is through those documents. And our buyers have to get them. So when we start diving into this, it's going to start making more sense. But realistically, you cannot judge a book by its cover. Every single property, you're going to have to do your due diligence and investigate. That's why it's so critical that listing brokers have all of their docs completely uploaded. You just have to do it. We were talking about that this morning. It's like, even when you cancel and relist, you cannot skip and miss all your supplements that are pertinent to the property.
And another little trick that Eric just showed me is when you do get your resale certificate, you'll have all of your documents like the bylaws, and sometimes they're enormous sizes, so you can't get them, like you can't just send them. So you can load them into SkySlope, then you can do a link to put them all so that when you do want to send it to the buyer's broker, you send them that link instead of having to put them in a Dropbox, and the Dropbox is always full. And you can just, that was a really cool,
Yep.
Maybe if you could show that.
We'll show that off probably on day 2.
Okay, but that was an
but
amazing trick.
It's awesome because not only does it do all that, make it easy, and you don't have to worry about emailing space or none of that to where, oh no, I have to send 16 emails because the docs are too large.
Yeah.
Or some of them are so large of files, you cannot email them.
Yeah.
So it's a great feature. And what's even better is it records who got them. And you have literally in your SkySlope, so-and-so got this file and downloaded them on this date at this exact time.
Oh.
So they can never say, oh, I didn't get them. You got proof.
Maybe you're gonna cover this later, but just quick question.
Yeah.
So for a while, we had a stretch of lawsuits being tying up the buildings so you can get financing. Is that did they solve that problem, or are we still seeing stuff like that?
It's gotten a little better.
All right.
There's still some of those out there. There's a
Okay.
couple of them. We even have, I know, 1 or 2 listings in some buildings that are HOAs are going through stuff and
Okay.
pretty much you're looking at cash deals only.
Well, another thing to keep in mind is this has happened to one of my condos just recently, is it lost its FHA status.
Yeah.
Because there was some, the FHA called it deferred maintenance, but it wasn't, it was damage.
Oh, yeah.
So they lost their FHA status until they get these repairs made. So we were actually in contract as this all happened, and the buyers on the other side were using FHA. And so the transaction, it ended up dying, so we're still on market.
Yeah, that's
It
a
is.
problem. All right, public offering statement or resale certificate. If this is new construction or a conversion in the condominium declaration, then the law requires buyer to receive a public offering statement. So that's the only time you'll see public offering statement. On every other sale, the law requires a resale certificate or MLS Form 27, Form 27 CIC, that's commercial, or an equivalent form. Most of the time, HOAs are managed by, management companies, HomeWise or they're probably one of the large ones that are online. But they have their own resale certificates. In the event that HOA doesn't have their own certificates, you have to use that MLS Form 27 and work with the management to fill it out. But most importantly, like Aaron was talking about on Monday, was the fact that the lender, they don't need the resale certificate. What do they need? You remember? For those of you that made it on Monday's class or watched the recording. Aaron even had it in he had a pop quiz. The questionnaire.
Oh,
It's just the questionnaire is all the lender needs. Sometimes they don't even want, the public offering statement, because that can actually overcomplicate the file and the underwriter could look at things and like question more things and cause the file to possibly, have issues. So realistically, lenders worrying about is their questionnaire, because they have specific questions that they need to be able to blend.
I don't know what the questionnaire is.
It's similar to a resale certificate because it asks questions. It's
Okay.
all these specific questions that the lender needs to know. It's like a 2-page, 3-page document.
But if you're representing a buyer though, you want to look at that resale certificate to see
Oh,
if there's any special
yeah.
assessment.
That I understand,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
All right, please note that condominiums created after July 1st, 2018 will not be subject to the Washington Condominium Act or CW 6434, but will instead be governed by the Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act, RCW 6490. Condominiums created before July 1st, 2018 will still be subject to Condominium Act, RCW 6434, unless the association amends the declaration to provide that RCW 6490 will apply instead. Condominiums created before July 1st, 1990 were formed under the Horizontal Property Regimes Act, RCW 6432. Review Legal Bulletin 213 from Northwest MLS for additional information. All right, here is our fill in the form completely disclosure, that's pretty much in every single forms manual. Be sure the form is completely filled in. The only blanks that are not required to be filled are the MLS number and tax parcel number. The agreement may be legally unenforceable if the other fields are not filled in. The most common mistakes include failure to check a box, lack of or an incomplete legal description, and lack of all signatures. So that includes the default items. Make sure you guys are filling those in. If there's an item for a checkbox, you're including it. If you don't check the box, you're basically telling everyone that that language is not even on the paper. That the box is not checked. Meaning it just does not apply. All right. And of course, everyone in here has a limited license to practice law under the Heritage House and other cases. The courts will hold you to the standard of care of an attorney in filling in this form. You are only licensed to fill in blanks of attorney written forms, such as this one, or insert attorney drafted or approved special clauses. Don't forget our special clauses in transaction desk, office clauses are all there for your use. All right, information verification period. Let's see, we'll start with Karen. You want to read E?
E, property information verification period. The purchase and sale agreement includes a provision that allows buyer time to verify that the information provided by seller and the listing brokerage firm about the property is accurate. The parties may negotiate the length of the information verification period, or buyer may satisfy/waive the provision as part of buyer's offer. If the parties do not insert a time period in specific term 17, general term W provides a default of a 10-day review period. If buyer does not satisfy/waive the provision, then during the review period, buyer should verify the accuracy of the information contained in the listing, flyers, advertising, other marketing, and the seller disclosure statement, Form 17. If buyer discovers a material inaccuracy in the information provided by seller or the listing brokerage firm, buyer may elect to terminate the agreement within the negotiated period. If buyer does not terminate, then buyer will waive the right to terminate and the transaction will move forward.
Okay, so information verification period is an important clause. It's an important piece to our agreements, but there is a lot of confusion about this. So let me go to the front here. And I'm gonna look at W because the funny thing is, because they've amended this, and it is right here, number 17. Right? So there is no automatic days for this, so you have to fill it in, but let me see what W says, because I've got an interesting story for you guys. Whoops. Oh, I guess it does default it to 10 if you don't fill it in, but that looks terrible when it's not filled in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I literally saw a deal this week. It was terribly written for one of our listings, and the buyer broker missed number 8. He didn't mark forfeiture or seller's election. He didn't mark possession. This wasn't marked. Put a closing date, but wasn't marked. Did not mark 22K services of closing, and did not even mark FERPTA, and also didn't mark verification period. So it's like, yeah, it was, our broker's like, man, we kind of want to sign up. We want to like kind of sign off on this, and we don't want to counter anything, Eric, because like we haven't had it. My seller's desperate, it's like, what do we do? It's been tough, but yet then I call the broker. I'm like, yo, you missed a bunch of boxes, even on the front page. He goes, oh yeah, I did miss that one. He goes, oh, just mark seller's election or remedies. This is what the buyer broker said. So I told him, I'm like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to mark some of these. We gotta have clarity in our agreement. I understand, the seller's a little bit, has a little bit of anxiety right now because the house hasn't moved, even after 2 price reductions. I get it. It's been a tougher market, but I'm sorry, we've got to have these things marked, because if there's a disagreement, you're gonna basically have issues later. You might as well just deal with this now, because you might end up dealing with it later and it's gonna be even worse.
So why would you not, if you're the listing agent, talk to your sellers and say, hey, this agent submitted this offer, there's a bunch of things missed on it. Would it be okay if I talk to them about just correcting everything and submitting it? Why would you not just do that?
Because the seller he had anxiety. He didn't want him to, because he said,
Pull out.
oh, can they not agree to initial these? Like, yeah, they
Okay,
can.
okay.
Could you sign it around and then just clean it up after that?
You know what? I'm okay with that in certain situations, but there was just too many, it was just too many things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't mind it,
But
like,
you have a,
yeah, you're cutting in and out, Jim.
but you have a voidable contract. Isn't that correct?
Well,
Can you hear me, Eric?
now we
I mean,
can.
yeah, you basically, there's so many, like you say, things not left. I mean, it almost gives the buyer a chance to walk away. That's
Well,
how they
yeah, and I
present
don't like to
it.
use the word voidable. I just like to use the word unenforceable. Because
Okay.
either party could potentially, argue and say, this is just unenforceable. Like, I'm sorry, I'm walking. Yeah, certain situations, I don't mind you guys moving forward, cleaning up later, but sometimes when it's just too many things. Like, why would you like go down that path and then if it's unenforceable, you're gonna, you're just dealing with too many issues at once. I would rather you just go ahead and they got it. It was fine. That they made the initials, they made the changes and they signed off on it.
It's
So
kind of like
it's
when you
okay.
say if there isn't the legal description, can we still close? Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's the same thing.
You can take it all the way to closing and it'll close.
Mhm.
Same thing if all these boxes are missed. Could it go all the way to close? Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so information verification period, another thing we gotta talk about is this is not a get out of jail free card like the home inspection contingency, the Form 35. It is not that. A buyer can't just say, I changed my mind about the property. And the only protection and contingency we even have in this deal is our information verification period. It literally states right there that you have to verify something that is inaccurate. And it could be anything, even advertisements from the broker. So let's see, I know we're a little bit ahead of it, but I kind of have to jump to it. So specific term 17, information verification period in general. With general term W allows buyer to verify that the information provided by seller and the listing firm about the property is accurate. During this period, buyer should verify the accuracy of the information contained in the listing, the flyers, advertising, marketing materials, etc. The parties negotiate the length of the buyer's review period in specific term 17, or buyer can satisfy or waive the provision as part of buyer's offer. Buyer may terminate the agreement by delivering notice of materially inaccurate information within the negotiated time period or 10 days after mutual acceptance if specific term 17 is not filled in. Buyer may use buyer's notice of termination information verification period form 90Z for this notice. So you must find something that's inaccurate. One of the most common ones you see in the past, brokers used to say, oh, yep, the school zone for this property, for this middle school you marked is not correct. It's actually this other school. Now the buyer can walk because you just verified something inaccurate. This is the reason why in the drop-down menu for each school, it says buyer to verify. It's one of the top ones. It's buyer to verify. Because, oh, if I didn't put that in there, then they can't use this to get out of the deal. So there's a lot of brokers who will still to this day use that buyer to verify for all three, the grade school, middle school, and high school. So junior high, they do that.
But if you do that, could you lose that on a buyer that's looking for a school particularly?
And see, that's the part that you could have issues with. Most of the other websites now use what's called good schools, goodschools.org. And they automatically show the mapping into your websites. In fact, all your John Scott websites have goodschools.org. It's built in. So you literally can go and pick what school map for each zone on johnscott.com. Redfin has it, Zillow does it. Zillow does it also. So it's kind of one of those things, but we did get a buyer out of a deal just a couple years ago on the information verification period. And what happened, they had no inspection contingency. They waived financing. They waived Form 17. And the only thing they had was the information verification period. And so when they came to us and asked, hey, the buyer's like, yeah, I just can't buy this place, no, not gonna do it. We said, well, your only out is their information verification period. We need to find something that is inaccurate with the listing. We got to find something, was it the school or whatever? And they're like, oh, you know what? There was one thing that I did notice. It says the buyer, because we looked, we couldn't find anything. The buyer goes, the home said it had AC. And we're like, no, we went through the listing. No, it doesn't say it in the listing. They go, oh, no, it was on the flyer. And we were like, do you still have that flyer? And they go, yeah, I think it's in my car. They went out and got it out of their car. Sure enough, on the flyer says AC. And so we said, I need you to send us a photo or scan that and send it to us right now. We sent the 90Z in a Form 50 to get the earnest money back. And the listing broker was pissed. He was like, we're not letting you guys out of this deal. There's no way we're giving you guys your earnest money. You guys had no contingency outs. And there's no way you're getting out on information verification period. Because I didn't put the schools in. This is what she said. We go, no, we're actually getting out of the deal. You said the home had AC. She goes, the home doesn't have AC. It's not in and she went in, she's like, it's not in the listing. She goes, we never said that. We go, it's actually was on your flyer. And we scanned the flyer over to her. And crickets. All of a sudden, yep, Form 50 came back signed, got the buyer earnest money back, got him out of the deal. And that listing broker called us back and said, in the 18 years I've been doing this, I cannot believe I've never seen this happen. I've never had this happen to me before. I even asked a bunch of my other experienced, office mates, and none of them have seen this. And what had happened is her marketing person had copied the template from their flyer from the previous listing and left like 4 items from the old listing on that flyer.
Yeah, verify.
But we verified an inaccuracy. So this is the only way a buyer can get out from this. So it can happen. It's rare, but this is not a get out of jail free card. Questions on that as I'm scrolling back way up?
I'd like to kind of make a thing on resale certificates.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they could take anywhere from like 10 to 20 days for the HOAs or the management companies to get those to you. But also at the same time, they're only good for 90 days.
Maybe.
Yeah. So it's like, when do you order that? It's kind of your, it's that kind of strategy and when do you do that?
Yeah, so when it comes to resale certificates, you're right. Sometimes they can take a long time to order them. Sometimes you get immediate access once the payment is paid from the seller to get access to like HomeWise or whatever docs online and you can access that. But it is critical you guys find out from the HOA management before the seller even pays, how long is that certificate good for? Because we have actually seen some condos and HOAs, this is really terrible, 30 days for an expiration date.
Yeah.
We had one last year, our seller was pissed because the buyer had to get an extension for 1 day. And they literally had exactly 30 days from when they issued it to the closing date, and it went past it, and they said, sorry, you have to pay again to get a new one.
Yeah.
So I was like, what are you talking about? We're only extending for 1 day. They go, sorry, it's not valid anymore. Plus, we have updated items, they said, from the last meeting.
Another thing to keep in mind is when you do order it and they send them to you, they usually send them to you in a link. And that link is only good for like 10 days. So make sure you download all of those things and put them in a folder.
Yeah.
Or you have to pay another $350.
Yeah.
That link.
They will literally tell you the link expired. Sorry, you get only so
So
much
make sure you
time.
save.
I've heard that before
Save
too.
them in a folder.
Yeah. All right, date of the agreement is prepared. Exactly. We talk about that. Okay. There is no blank to insert the date of mutual acceptance of the agreement. The date of mutual acceptance is important because it triggers many of the timelines in the purchase and sale agreement. Mutual acceptance occurs when a party accepts an offer by signing it without making any changes and delivering the signed agreement to the other party. If the parties agree upon and attach a legal description after the delivery of the signed agreement, then for the purpose of computing time, mutual acceptance is the date of the delivery of the signed agreement rather than the date of the legal description is attached. You can confirm the date of the mutual acceptance with the fax mail confirmation sheet if the acceptance was faxed to the other party, or with the email received date if the acceptance was emailed to both the broker and the brokerage firm email addresses specified on page 1 of the purchase and sale agreement. A received stamp will also confirm the day that the acceptance was delivered. Alternatively, you may make a note of the day on which you received or delivered the final acceptance. When it comes to transmitting documents, there's some very key important things you guys have to understand and know and remember and do every single time you are doing real estate. First and foremost, nothing is done, it's not agreed upon until it's been delivered. Delivery is such a key component to your business. And it's something that you guys have to just, really understand. And really, why our contracts say time is of the essence, it is no joke. All offers can be withdrawn prior to acceptance if it's not delivered. One of the most probably long-running stories I've told many, many years is about a real story that happened in the Bellevue office. And one of our listing brokers, this is a multi-million-dollar property, listed it, and they thought they were going to get multiple offers. They didn't. They ended up getting one good offer, right? That was, close to list, very close to list price and favorable terms. The seller countered one item. There was one tiny little item that the seller countered on and made the initials, and they sent it back to the buyer broker and the buyer broker firm. So very important, every single time you guys are sending documents back and forth, every single time you have to send it to the firm, the authorized firm email address, and that other broker's email address. Always sending it to the two. If you're sending it to their TC also, then maybe you're sending it to 3 people. I don't mind about that one, but you at least have to send it to the other 2 and do it every single time. But this counteroffer was made about 11 in the morning. Okay. And our broker changed actually 2 items because when they received the offer, they had that same date for its expiration date. So do not forget that. If you do not change and counter that also, how many days does that give? Don't say, Jason, because I know you know. How many
2.
days? 2. That's right. 2 business days if you do not state. If you left it blank on your offer or your offer's expiration date in the contract, it's exactly the same thing. It's only good for 2 business days. It's not forever. So
Counter form, you can actually change it.
and that's why there's a counter offer addendum form 36 that states when you will that counter offer expires by. And brokers get this confused a lot. It happens very, very often. And it's easy to forget because you think, oh, this offer is still valid because it's today's date, right? Today's the what, 17th? 18th. Yeah, 18th. So if it came over of this morning and it said it expires from the buyer on the 18th, that automatically means it's gonna be at 9 p.m. If you as a buyer, as a listing broker, are countering that offer and you strike the price, let's say, and you made a change and that's the only thing you're changing, you make an initial, you better actually change that date for the expiration also. If you want it to be the same day, that's fine. Cross off their date for the 18th. You write June 18th, 2025, and make an initial because you're telling that client that they're not getting 2 business days. They're getting today till 9 p.m. also.
Yeah.
So it's really key to get that, to understand that and keep that, in your brains whenever you're dealing with offers. Because this is the thing, this is how houses can accidentally be sold twice.
Yeah.
Do you guys see how? You understand what I'm talking about? What I'm saying is, if you did not change it to that same date, with that example I just gave you. And all of a sudden, you're thinking, what? Oh, this deal expires tonight at 9. All of a sudden, maybe the buyer broker does get that initial for the price and sends it tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, but you're like, oh, yeah, you guys only had till 9 p.m. And then you went ahead and actually signed off on another offer. You would have sold this house 2 times to 2 buyers. Pretty much lawsuit. If you can't get both parties to, one of them to walk away. So these things happen, and it's in guaranteed they probably happen every year out there somewhere. So-
Another thing you do on the counter form is like, say you're trying to go under contract like on a Friday and you notice that they have some open houses or something on Saturday or Sunday. You can say like, I want this to expire Saturday at 3 o'clock when your open house starts to
Yeah.
force them to take the deal.
Yes, you can actually change the day and the time. All right, so delivery. Back to the story from Bellevue. The listing broker, made the counter, and they countered something small. They countered also the date for the expiration to the same day. They sent it back. Didn't hear nothing. In the meantime, one of the other buyers who did voice, or said that they were interested also, they came back and they actually said, hey, we're submitting an offer. It's a really good offer. More money, like 250,000 more money. 2-week closing, let them have a free rent back for 3 weeks or 2 weeks or something like that. So the seller was like, I want this offer. And this is all about, 5, 6 p.m. in the evening. And they said, well, the seller said, I feel bad for the first buyer, but you know what? This is way more money. This is way better terms. And it's all cash. Like, we don't have to worry about appraisal or nothing. Waived inspection. Like, come on, this is perfect. I want to take this offer. So our listing broker said, okay, we can go ahead and sign the Form 36A, which is the withdrawal of offer or counteroffer addendum, and attach the counteroffer that they had made earlier in the day. And seller signed off on that withdrawal, and she sent it to the buyer broker's firm, or buyer broker's email, and the authorized firm email address. Sent it, and this is all happened by about 5:30, 6 p.m. somewhere in there. And they went ahead and signed off on the other offer and fully accepted it as is, no changes. And so our listing broker was like, all right, well, I change the listing to pending. I'm done. And then she was like, I'm not gonna call that other broker. I mean, realistically, she should have said something. All of a sudden, it's around 8:45, 8:40 at night, something like that, in the late evening. And buyer broker calls like, oh, so sorry, I'm sending it right now. I've got it. I'm sorry. I got behind. I'm sorry. But I'm sending it out. And our listing broker is like, you're too late. Where were you? Like, we counted this early in the day. Like, what happened? She felt bad, but she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. My buyer signed it earlier, and I just got caught up in watching the Oscars. I was watching TV. And she never delivered it. And then when she did send it over, she looked at the timestamp from Athena. The buyers had actually signed it around 4:30, before 5 p.m. The buyers had actually signed it. But the buyer broker just didn't deliver it. It's not agreed upon until it's delivered, and it can be withdrawn. We actually, just a week and a half ago, we had to do something very similar in here. Our listing broker had to withdraw their counter because they got a better offer. So it's just critical that you guys understand this piece and how to handle this, because you're going to be dealing with it sometime.
Well, another thing is if you're working with a buyer and you have a counter in,
Yeah.
but they're still wanting to look at houses.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they find, oh, I want this one instead. And if you know that in advance, have that already worked up in advance to,
Withdraw their offer.
withdraw
Yeah.
so then you can get out of it, oh, I want this one instead. Can we get out of that one? Yeah, I'll just send this right now. I already have it prepared and ready to go.
Oh, because it hasn't been signed on the
Yeah.
other party's
It
behalf.
hasn't been sent. Maybe you got it,
Oh.
yeah. Jason
Oh, it
talked about a
hasn't been
strategy of your buyer's like, I like this house, let's write it up.
Oh,
But there is another one, maybe we should look at it, and then
Right.
you're like, I'm gonna sign a 36A just in case, buyer.
Yeah.
And then that way,
Yeah,
if
there
you're,
you go.
before the seller signs off and sends back the agreement with no changes, it's a race against time. It's literally, I mean, some brokers will do that. They'll sign that and have it ready to go. Because then-
If you know that they're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of know.
Mhm. All right, questions before we kind of move on? Zoom people, you're being pretty quiet.
Kind of similar, like if you have like a backup offer in on something else.
right.
And
Yeah.
it's like your buyer's like, hey, I want to look at this one this weekend. And so you already had that withdrawal already in advance. And they're like, oh, I want this. So then you can just send that withdrawal because you don't want to have them buy two houses. So.
One last tip I will say about when you're dealing with offers, counter offers and anything. Anytime a broker sends you an offer or a counter offer, whatever it is that they're sending you, you should be responding via email and say received.
Yeah.
It's really good idea to show the acknowledgement when you actually, see it or get it. I've had people send, offers or something like super late at night, you don't see it till the next morning, right? And, it's a good idea to say, okay, received, I see, this is where I'm seeing it now. It's a good idea to do that.
So what are your views on like having everything go to the firm, like email address, so you see that? Obviously, it should be for the biggies, like contracts, inspection, responses and stuff like that. But what if it's just general stuff back and forth? It's like, hey,
Oh, an email?
yeah,
No.
what? Yeah, okay.
No. You need to think about it the same way of how you guys organize your sky slope, right? Because you are supposed to be retaining any communication that is pertinent to the transaction. So all the emails, your text messages, about the file, it should be forwarded to the sky slope email address for that file. Because every time you set up a new file in sky slope, it creates a unique email address just for that transaction. And you should be forwarding everything to it. You could forward even your voicemails.
Yeah.
Something very important like, oh, buyer's like, hey, leaving you a voicemail. Hey, sorry, Samantha, you know what? I don't want to spend that $500 for an inspection in sewer scope. I just changed my mind. Hey, I just want to let you know, I'm not gonna do it. I'm canceling. I'm fine buying the house. It looks fine. That's a pretty important voicemail, wouldn't you think? Yeah, you could actually forward that voicemail right from your iPhone or, your, also from your Android. You just have to share it forward, right? And you can literally. Let's go to voicemails. You go to the voicemail. Once you're in, you can see it. Right there, you can. Oops, I'm actually on the wrong one. Okay, once you're inside the voicemail itself, you got the little forward share icon and then choose mail. The email address to that file, for that transaction, boom, it will put it right into your SkySlope.
Yeah.
Everything. And the Department of Licensing, actually, when they do their audits, every single audit, that's what they're looking for in each file.
Yeah.
Oh, I see no communication. So you tell me that, the brokers didn't send any emails back and forth? Yeah, we get dinged every single time. Every single time they find someone who didn't include pertinent email communication in the file.
Kind of a new thing that I'm doing now is like, as soon as you know that you're going mutual, and then you're gonna be sending that to title and escrow to open that, I'll just, instead of having to work twice as hard, I'll just put that email address as a BC or a
Yeah.
BC on there, so you only have to send it once. And so then when it goes into your SkySlope, then you can assign it, because then you don't have to, oh, did I send that to? If you just do it from the beginning, it just saves you a step. Just that's the new thing
Yeah.
I've been doing.
That's great. So every single communication, you just add it in as the BCC.
Yeah, and it just
info?
goes to it, yeah. And then it's like, it's just there. I don't have to worry about going, did I send that, or did I do the response and did I assign it yet?
Yeah,
So it's just all there.
yeah, I love it. It's a great thing to do. All right, MLS number, of course, insert that. Offer expiration date, I've kind of covered that in pretty in depth.
Oh, we actually had remember we had that conversation about what happens if you get it after 9 PM?
Oh,
I
yes.
did a little more deep dive into that, and on the Northwest MLS, they suggested that would be the one item that you would counter, is if you receive that after 9 PM. So
You'd have to because it
yeah,
expired.
the one thing that you have to counter,
Yeah,
so. It was an interesting read, actually, it was actually inside the Northwest MLS, it's a thing.
oh, one of either their note things
Yeah,
or talking
mhm.
about it. Let's see, Jason, you wanna read three?
Sure,
It's a
offer
long one.
expiration
We
date.
get water.
Insert the date by which buyer's initial offer must be accepted. Note that the acceptance is not legally effective until the delivery to buyer, buyer broker, or at the licensed office of the buyer broker. Acceptance must be delivered by 9 PM of the specific date of, or the offer expires. Acceptance shall be efficient until the signed copy is actually received by seller, by listing broker, or at the licensed office of listing broker. If no expiration date is specified or counteroffer, the offer counteroffer shall expire 2 days countered according to the computation of time provision after the offer counteroffer is delivered by the party making the counter offer unless sooner withdrawn. Note, once an offer or counteroffer is made, delivery it to the other party as soon as possible. Delay could result in the other party claiming that it is your fault, that he or she did not have time to consider or assign that offer before it was withdrawn or expired.
All right, we'll pause it there anywhere, or anyway, good job, Jason. So again, it's 2 days, right? The most important thing to keep in your mind is that whatever the expiration date is, it does end at 9 PM. Where brokers get confused is, let's say, because today's the 18th, and you wrote up a deal today, and you wanted it to expire on the 19th. Okay, so you put the 19th, so it's the 19th by 9 PM. Is when this offer is gonna expire, right? So that's tomorrow, 9 PM. All of a sudden tonight, the buyer signs around the deal at 11:30 PM. When is mutual acceptance? And they delivered it, so they delivered it. So when is mutual acceptance? This is the part that like people will get confused.
You said that it was 11:30 PM,
Yep.
so it'd be the following day, correct?
Mhm. That's
Not done
exactly-
that-
That's why I'm kind of giving you guys this little pop quiz. It is 11:30 PM. The offer doesn't expire until tomorrow at 9 PM. That's the part that will get people.
Day zero.
It's day zero. Because it is still, the offer's valid. It goes all the way till midnight, it goes all the way till the next morning, and it goes all the way till 9 PM tomorrow evening. So just because it came after 9 PM of when they've sent it over, you still are having mutual acceptance that day. We get just locked in our heads that, oh, it's 9 PM, it's 9 PM, because it's after 9 PM, you think it's the next day.
And that's when all of your stuff happens, like your.
Oh, yeah.
5 days.
Timelines are beginning.
2 days for delivery.
Would that work? So like tomorrow's a holiday, right? So how would that
Now we
work?
got different.
Yeah, so how would that work?
So being a holiday, then it does, it
Day zero still.
days still, yes,
So-
still zero is still the same day.
It's just you don't count.
It's just you don't count the next day for your timelines.
So it'd be like Friday?
Yeah.
Unless it's greater, if it's 6 and greater.
Yeah.
We'll get that as soon as we get it, we'll do computation of time here coming up.
If you look at a calendar, it's actually pretty simple. If you count and you see, but
Yeah.
yeah, but a physical calendar. If
Right.
Yeah.
zero.
One of the best things to kind of do is get a calendar in front of your
Yep.
eyes. It's always best when you can kind of do this. I don't know if Zoom people can see the screen with the calendar right now.
Zero.
I hope you can. But you can see, here is the 18th we're on right now for today. And if it went all the way until 10:30 or 11:30 PM, today is day 0.
Yeah.
Tomorrow holiday
Tomorrow's doesn't count.
doesn't count. First day is the 20th. Day 2 would be the 23rd. 3, 4, 5. So if you had anything that was 5, let's say the home inspection contingency is 5 days. It's 5 business days.
Yeah.
Weekends and holidays don't count. But if it was 6 days or greater, they count, but you can't land on them.
Yeah.
So now you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it'd be the 24th. You'd actually have more days having 5 rather than 6.
Yeah. And if it falls on a Saturday, it rolls back. If it falls on a Sunday, it rolls forward.
Boof, that's only thing counting backwards, like your prior to closing walkthrough.
Yep.
Any timeline that's before the closing
Yeah.
goes reverse.
Yep.
So. All right, so handling offers, counter offers, we already did, oh, no, actually, always try to use the separate Northwest MLS counter offer addendum form 36 and be sure it is dated and signed. It is common to make changes right on the purchase and sale agreement and have all the parties initial and date in the margin. If you do not make changes to the purchase and sale agreement form itself, have the parties initial next to each change and be sure they put a date beside each initial. If you use form 36, you also avoid any ambiguity in the expiration of the counteroffer because every form 36 includes a provision that tells the party when the counteroffer expires. That's what they're talking about, like why you should use the form 36 rather than just making changes on the contract. Because that brokers are gonna mess up on that time.
What are your thoughts when you're using a 36
Mhm.
and then the other side strikes it out? And then they put initials on there when it's not necessary. And then it comes back and then they're like, you didn't put your initials on here. And you're like, you don't need to put your initials on here.
You're
You
not
just-
supposed
you
to
just-
make
you still
any
just do
changes
it, or
when
what-
you use the
or
36.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. I can't give an answer to that's gonna protect everyone for every situation in, with that, because
And it happens
the
all
truth
time.
is, sometimes they're trying to wiggle out.
Yeah.
You never know, like, you got someone who's very, smart on the other side, they're like, I actually left initials in here, so, I could try to get out, they think that's what they're doing. But realistically, you do not make any, when you use the 36, and when we get to that form, it's coming up in forms class, we're on 28 now, so it's coming up in a, here in probably a month. We'll be on form 36, but we do the deep dive on it then, but the thing to really remember is 36, like realistically, you don't even have to sign the agreement. You only sign the 36 and everything behind it is agreed upon. That's how it's actually
So you don't-
written. You don't even have to sign it or initial anything. The only one I would be careful of is the illegal description, but
Yeah.
even then you really don't have to. Because you lock them down with that 36. It literally states that everything behind this you agree to.
So what are your thoughts like when you have that sign in your seller, you're on the seller,
Mhm.
you're like, well, wait a second.
But the price is different.
Price is this.
Oh, yeah.
Can you at least strike that? You're like, well, we don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
To.
I would avoid the we don't necessarily have, I would say, no, we don't mess with anything because this form states, this is an attorney drafted form. And the design of this form was to make it very clear that we make no changes in the agreement, that this document supersedes everything.
Yeah.
So it trumps everything right there. It just, every single thing in it. They can't argue if they sign off on this. You don't want to do
I'm
it.
thinking of another, so you counter and then you counter the counter and they'll strike the counter.
Yeah, form 36 is a one and done form, one use. If they're not accepting it, that other party has to make a new 36 and send back everything else with it with no changes. That new 36 is what is being countered now to the other party, and you actually have to reverse the names at the top. Because it says like the undersigned, you know, who is making this counter to the undersigned, making the counter to the other person. So that happens all the time. I see that crap all
Well,
the time.
they'll like strike it, they'll put the
Yeah.
X through it. You're like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. All right, names, obviously, we won't cover that. We do that way too often. All right, very important to put the unit number, condominium, insert the name of the condominium building, street address, put the property address, county, zip code. Recording number of declaration. If the condominium declaration has been recorded, check the declaration recording number box and insert the recording number in the space provided, or check the declaration recording number attached as Exhibit A. Most of the time, you'll be marking the attachment as Exhibit A because it's a resale. If it's a brand new home or, you know, condominium, or it's a conversion, like an apartment that was converted into one, then you would be using the declaration recording, and you'd have to have that number.
You mean like it was an apartment and it was a conversion?
Yep.
That we're talking about. Got it.
Yep, it would have a declaration recording number for that complex, you know, for that new project. Really, realistically, it'd be, you know, whenever you're dealing with resale, we'd always be having the legal. Parking space numbers. These are important. Do not miss these. Insert a parking stall number only if a parking stall is assigned in the condominium declaration. If no stall is assigned in the declaration, but off-street parking is available or is assigned by the condominium association, describe this in an addendum to the agreement. Parking spaces can be, or boat slips. They have boat slips sometimes to condominiums. You want to get these types of things in the agreement. It's critical. Sometimes sellers will own a parking space and they will actually rent it. They'll make money off of their parking space. This is very common in Seattle. Yeah, you'll see this pretty common. It's and it's not, you know, unheard of to hear someone getting like $300-400 a month for parking,
I read somewhere in
or
Seattle.
500.
Someone sold a parking stall for $250,000.
Yeah, yeah, parking stalls can actually be sold independently. So it's really critical for whenever you're dealing with condos, and especially in like the big cities. Or for that matter of fact, really just remember when it comes to any condos, just what parking space does it come with? Do a deep dive, look into the docs to see if the unit comes with one.
Yeah.
There have been sales that have happened.
Yeah.
To where they missed it. They didn't even know they had parking space. Next thing you know, someone's like trying to hit you up and like, oh, hey, I'd like to buy your parking space. And they're like, what parking space? I don't have a parking space. They're like, oh yeah, your unit comes with parking space 23. I didn't know that. I've been here for 2 years.
Yes.
I would have loved to know I had parking. What do you mean?
Selling feature.
Yeah, like these kind of things can happen when they fall through the cracks. So just make sure you are checking in the documents, make sure that the parking, you know, or whatever it comes with, storage too. Very important to know where it is. All right, included items. Samantha, you want to do 14?
Yeah, check the items that will be included as a part of the sale. Write in any items that are not otherwise identified as specific term or general term. Included items, but which will be included in the sale. To address properties that have multiple appliances, several items included. For example, if a property contains multiple refrigerators, by selecting refrigerator is a specific term, all refrigerators at the property would be included in the sale. If the property contains multiple refrigerators and the parties wish to exclude one of the refrigerator's checkbox should be selected. And the excluded refrigerator should be listed on excluded provision of the optional clause addendum form 22B.
I'll go for it.
General term C, provides a list of items that are included in every sale. The list includes things like wall-to-wall carpeting, window and door screens, window treatments, water heaters, garage door openers, plants and trees planted in the ground, and all associated operating remote controls and access permissions. There is also a catch-off provision to include any item that is a fixture. A fixture is a personal property that is attached to the land or building that is regarded as an irremovable part of the real property. If there is a fixture on the property that the seller wants to exclude from the sale, that item should be listed in the excluded item provision in Form 22D. If there is an item that the buyer wants to be included in the purchase, that the item should be identified in specific terms. 5, if there's potential uncertainty about the specific item, the parties should specifically address whether that item is included or not. If any of the included items are leased or in covered general terms, C requires that seller acquire that and clear title is to such items or before closing.
Yeah, great job, Samantha. Just, you guys are always gonna be dealing with this. The included items is just something that is, it's an important step to understand what is gonna be included and what is not gonna be included. And more importantly, what does the client want? If there is a greenhouse on the property and they're like, oh, that's nice. Greenhouse is kind of like just floating there. Sometimes they put bricks or sometimes they stake it to the ground. But it's not really an item that's just automatically included. Now, sometimes sellers may leave them and they don't want to take it. But if it ever comes down to an item that the client loves and wants to be included in the sale, write it in the deal. It's,
Be careful of how much stuff you put in there though, because the lender could kick it out.
oh yeah, some things,
Yeah.
personal item like
Yeah. It needs,
furniture,
needs to be done.
all that other
Needs to
stuff.
be done out, because the lender will kick it out, say it needs to be done outside
Yeah.
the sale, and it has to be like on a bill of sale or something between the parties.
Mhm.
And just check with the lender.
Yeah, personal item things, some of those things are very, messy, very messy. If you were gonna do a greenhouse, you would check this box, write it in here, greenhouse. Pretty much everything else in here, hot tubs, all those other things, pretty easily identifiable, right? You just make sure you mark it. I was having a conversation with someone this morning, and let's say the seller said, I'm not including my washer and dryer or my refrigerator. It's a Samsung with, the TV on it that texts me when the milk's low. I don't want to, I don't want to include that as a $5,000 refrigerator. No way, I'm not including it. Okay, you got it, seller. And then the listing broker puts it in, puts it into the listing and says, fridge is not included, no washer and dryer, right? So none of those items are marked. But then the buyer comes along and we write an offer, and if the boxes are marked, are they included then? What happens? What do you think?
If it's included and they sign off on it.
You're exactly right. This contract's between the buyer and the seller. The buyer didn't sign the listing agreement. They're not a part of that. They have no idea what that is. It doesn't matter what's in the listing. What matters is what was negotiated and agreed upon.
And if there's something gray in there that they want, like say they want like a chandelier.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Their family chandelier. Like suggest to them to have that removed before you go on market and have it replaced with something else. Just because sometimes if you put in the listing does not convey with the property, then it's like, well, buyer's like, well, what is it? So
Yeah.
just kind of have like some clarity before moving forward.
Yeah, seller, like when it comes to sellers, like, it's a good idea, listing brokers, when you're having your consultation to say, hey, are you gonna not include anything that you're gonna plan to take with you that's a permanent fixture? Like you're looking at this chandelier or whatever. I've even seen a Chihuly chandelier that had to be insured to be removed from the property. I mean, very expensive. Things like that, or even Tony talked about one deal, he had koi, very, very expensive koi fish in a pond. There's a pond. Are the koi included? What do you guys think?
They're there when you.
You didn't write it in the deal.
Oh, then no.
right? It's not written in the deal, but it's a koi pond. You're not gonna remove the koi pond. That's a permanent kind of picture. Are fish included? What do you think?
No,
No, they're not. This was a deal that happened, multi-million dollar deal, got to the very end at closing, and they were like, days before, and they're like, hey, we've got the people coming bringing gonna be removing the fish, and they're like, what do you mean remove the fish? Why, the pond was like crazy nice. I mean, this thing was huge. And they're like, that's part of the reason I bought it. Well, you didn't write it in that to be included, and these were thousands of dollars for these fish, thousands. I mean, they were huge. So they're like, you didn't write it in, so we're taking them. Well, I'm not buying the house then. So, see, these things will happen if you don't write it in. If it's important enough,
Yeah.
write it in the agreement, even if you think, oh, it's included, I'm
But
sure
sometimes
it's
if
fine.
you have it in the contract, like I just had a wedding venue that sold.
Okay.
And the goats and then the doves were all included, and a bunch of other things. The lender made us take all of that out because that wasn't part of the real estate transaction. That was part of, needs to be done outside of the sale of the real estate. There's some things to keep in mind. If you do like laundry list stuff out, the lender might kick it out.
Yeah, you gotta be careful. But when it's important, write it in. And remember, if it's not marked, they don't have to leave it. They can remove it. And the opposite goes if the client does not want the item. Oh my gosh, there's an old nasty smelly fridge in the garage. Like, oh gosh, and the house is vacant. There's your sign to say, I want that. You want that refrigerator removed, right, buyer? And they're like, yeah, that means you better put it in 22D and say excluded items to be removed prior to closing. So get it added.
Sometimes the realtor's on the buyer and there's a bunch of stuff like an estate sale or something.
Oh, yeah.
And it closes and there's all this stuff there. Sometimes they're like, oh man, now we gotta deal with all this stuff. This is awful. To other times, wow, we just got a riding lawnmower and all that. This is great. So just make sure to talk with your clients and know where they are.
Yep. All right, purchase price, obviously insert the purchase price. It is advisable to both spell out and insert the numbers, example, $100,000. Form and amount of earnest money, insert the amount of earnest money. Earnest money is to be paid by a note. You may wish to use form 31, kind of obsolete. The only time you're probably ever using 31 these days is probably on vacant land deals. It's the only time I'm still seeing them. Earnest money promissory note. If seller accepts earnest money in the form of a promissory note, consider making it payable on acceptance by seller or on buyer's waiver of satisfaction of an inspection contingency. Most of the time, it's a feasibility contingency. In any event, do not insert the words payable on closing. If the sale never closes, the note may never be payable. Instead, if the parties wish the earnest money note to be payable on closing, insert the calendar date on which closing is to occur. Example 15, 2023, if the closing date is later. Extended, you should amend the promissory note and indicate an extension on the note due date accordingly. Earnest money delivery date, the party holding earnest money. Insert the delivery date, which the number of days after mutual acceptance, the earnest money must be delivered to the party holding the earnest money, either the buyer brokerage firm or the closing agent. If left blank, general term B states the buyer must deliver the earnest money within 2 days after mutual acceptance. It is common for buyer brokerage firms to require the earnest money to be delivered to buyer broker upon the initial presentation of the offer to seller. Check the appropriate box to indicate whether earnest money will be held by the buyer brokerage firm, which we never do. It's always closing agent. In addition, where applicable, check the box indicating that earnest money is to be paid by promissory note. If the parties elect to have the earnest money held by a buyer brokerage firm, general term B, earnest money permits buyer brokerage firms to transfer earnest money to closing agent at closing. If the earnest money is delivered to the buyer broker, he or she must then deposit any check to be held by a buyer brokerage firm or delivery of the check to be held by closing agent by the delivery date. If you guys do that, you touch a buyer's or client's earnest money, even making copies of the check, whatever, you're supposed to give a form 89 and that both firms must have that form 89. That's a receipt of earnest money. Don't do it. Just have the client send it directly. And as far as days goes, now you choose how many days you have. I would always do 3 days. And the reason being is most of the time these days, earnest money is being sent via wire. Each bank has a cutoff time before things can be sent out. right? 2 p.m. And earn it, and then of course, escrows have a cutoff time for received, which I don't remember their time, 2:30 or 3:30 or something like that. If you're past that window, it's not gonna go in and you'll be late. And if you're late, then each party has to or it has to notify the other parties. And also the seller has to be made, aware of the earnest money being late. And in that event, the seller has a right to terminate your agreement. They could just walk because of one date. A lot of times I see people writing one day because they're trying to be, don't do that because you probably will be late. More than likely, you will be. Just don't do it. 3 is best.
The title and escrow, they can do all kinds of transfers now, the AC, what are they, ACH?
Yeah, ACH scan like
Yeah,
stuff. There's a
there's
lot
all
of cool
kinds of
things they can do.
I'm kind of old school and I just drop off checks, just because their title offices are usually all over the place. Then you just get your receipt there, but there are so many ways you can deliver now.
Absolutely. All right, default. Check the appropriate box to indicate what remedy seller will have upon buyer's breach of the agreement. Check forfeiture of earnest money if the parties agree that seller's sole remedy in the case of buyer's breach is to retain the portion of earnest money which does not exceed 5% of the purchase price. Check the seller's selection of remedies box. If the parties agree that seller will have the full range of remedies available at law, example, seller may keep the earnest money as liquidated damages. They can sue for actual damages or seek specific performance of the agreement. This is why you would never mark seller's selection of remedies, even though we had a buyer broker tell us, oh, go ahead and just mark that. They clearly don't understand the agreement and they are not protecting their client if they were to say something like that, and they actually did. All right, due to changes to the law in 2005, the parties no longer need to separately initial the forfeiture earnest money provision of the agreement. Therefore, all you need to do is check the box for the provision to apply. All right, title company. Let's see, Jim, can you unmute and read this one?
Yep. Title insurance company. Insert the name of the title insurance company. A seller who has already ordered a preliminary title commitment may wish to use the same title company to issue the policy. Please read the title insurance provision of the purchase and sale agreement in the general terms. By default, the parties agree that seller will pay the premium for the then current Alta form of homeowner's policy of title insurance for 1 to 4 family residents. If the homeowner's policy is not available for the property, the then current Alta standard form owner's policy will issue instead. If seller orders a preliminary title commitment that buyer declines use, then the buyer agrees to pay any cancellation fee owing to the original title insurance company. If the buyers like a different policy of title insurance, you will need to include Form 22D optional clause addendum. Form 22D provides 2 additional policies of title insurance to choose from. 1, the standard form of owner's policy, which provides less coverage from the homeowner's policy, or 2, an extended coverage policy of title insurance, which provides more coverage but at a significant expense to buyer. Please see the manual instructions for Form 22D for additional information.
Yep. So yeah, we just did 22D just a month ago or so. But just talk about that differences. Don't forget, if you end up using and marking that in like the extended policy, like buyer's going to be paying cost of a survey. So that's not cheap.
The other thing you kind of keep in mind now is we're starting to see like some contingent sales on subject properties.
Oh, yeah.
Moving forward, sometimes it's easier to work with the same title company for both transactions.
Absolutely.
So if you're, see how the buyer can change that. If they're under contract with their current house with like ABC escrow, you might want to use that ABC moving forward with that other sale instead of XYZ.
Yeah, you're gonna be critical using the same title and escrow if you're, contingent. You really need to do that to make it easy on everybody.
Just kind of a tip.
Yep.
Eric, have you seen any, because I wasn't aware that if I use as a buying agent, a different title insurance company, then they've already done a preliminary commitment that the buyer could be responsible for the seller's cancellation fee.
Every single time you guys order a preliminary title, which you need to, you have to. I think if a title company's charging you guys and you're doing those, get somebody else.
Yep.
Switch to someone else immediately. It's just a necessary item that we have to make sure we're working with the proper client. And making sure that you even have a right to sell it. We had someone in here, literally, we had a seller. Come to one of our brokers and say, yeah, I need to sell, I need to sell right away. And middle of a divorce, there's your red flag. And you know what, I gotta get this thing sold and I need to move to a different state. I'm starting a new job. And our broker goes, okay, well, where's the wife, and there's soon to be ex-wife, and goes, oh, she's fine with us handling it all. And she's not even on the loan, she's not on the deal, don't worry about it.
Community property state.
Yeah, it's Washington's community property state. And sure enough, we had our broker go ahead, she pulled title, she had preliminary title pulled, guess what, the wife is on it, she was named on it, she's on there. She's like, we can't sell this without her signatures on everything. And then guess what? The seller goes, yeah, I think I'm gonna use someone else. He left. It's like, yeah, you don't want that headache.
What you can do that as long as the attorney says that they draft up something that says that she releases the property.
Oh, yeah,
And you can do that.
could, but
Yeah,
that's,
you just have to ask all the questions.
it's a danger though. All right, closing date, insert the date in which the sale must be closed. If the closing date is inadvertently scheduled on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, general term F provides that the closing shall occur on the next day. That is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. Note, if the parties later wish to change the date, this modification of the agreement must be made in writing. Form 22Y would be what you use for that. 22Y, is a modification of closing date. Don't use a Form 34 to write an extension or that's why they call it a modification of closing date. There's a form for that. Possession date. Check the appropriate box to indicate when buyer will be entitled to possession on closing or other, followed by a blank line. If you select the box for other, make sure you clarify that the parties intend by writing the day on which possession will occur on the blank line that follows. You may include a date certain, or you may refer to a period of time. After closing, example, 3 days after closing. If you refer to a period of time measured in days, the days will be considered calendar days as set forth in the computation of time provision of the agreement. If parties agree to possession before or after closing, be sure that the parties contact their respective insurance companies to assure appropriate hazard or liability insurance policies are in place. Also, if possession transferred at time other than closing, be sure to have the parties execute either MLS Form 65A, early possession, or MLS Form 65B, delayed possession, or alternative rental agreements. General term F requires seller to deliver keys, including any access codes to the property on the earlier of the closing date or possession date. Very important, if you're marking, anytime after closing, you have to use the 65B if a seller's staying in possession of the property. Oh, Eric, but what if it's 1 day? What do you think? It says in the agreement, you will. If possession is not on closing, you have to execute that. It's a requirement.
And if there's a rent back, I just had
Oh.
one where we did, it was gonna be a 60-day rent back, but they only needed 30. So then we had to modify all that to 30 because title and escrow was gonna take that with the rental amount. in.
Right.
Just make sure you stay on top of all of that stuff.
What happens if you executed that and then,
They owed another $5,000.
yeah, and then it closes? The buyer got the payment for that, time frame that they agreed upon. And all of a sudden the seller is like, well, I'm done early. I don't need 60. I only needed 20. So you owe me, you have to pay me back 40.
Right.
Do they?
Good luck.
No.
No, it doesn't say that in the agreement. They would get the money back. If they have some type of situation like that, you guys better write that in or they're not getting the money back.
Yeah. And then make sure you deliver it to title and escrow because they're the ones that
Yeah.
are handling the funds.
Yes. Always best to do that. All right, services of closing agent for payment of utilities. I got a new update for this for you guys. Check the box to indicate whether the parties request the services of the closing agent and paying off unpaid utility charges or whether they waive these services. RCW 6080 provides that unless buyer and seller waive in writing the services of closing agent and paying off unpaid utility charges. then seller must include in the purchase and sale agreement a request of the closing agent to disperse settlement funds necessary to satisfy unpaid utility charges affecting the property. The request to the closing agent must include the names and addresses of all utilities having lien rights. Let me highlight this. Closing agents may charge a fee for these services, which a lot of them do. If the services are not waived, attach MLS Form 22K, Identification of Utilities Addendum. This form requires seller to list the names and addresses of the utility providers. We specifically use the word waive to make it easier for licensees to explain to buyers and sellers that seller is required to include a request of the closing agent in the agreement unless both parties waive these services in writing. Note that general term H, closing costs and prorations, provides that the parties request the services of closing agent unless they check the waived box of specific term number 12. It says right here, and we just did 22K, a while back, that, you guys are gonna fill in the names and addresses of all utilities having lien rights. What do most listing brokers and sellers do on 22K? What do they mostly do?
Fill in the names.
They just fill in the name.
Yeah.
Who is it? PSE. Or they may put Puget Sound Energy. They don't write the name, the address, the contact number. The website is optional. That's one of the only optional items in it is the website. Redfin is now requiring in any deal you do with them on the 22K that every item on there is filled in completely or they will not accept it. My hunch is they got hit with something. Because that's typically what happens, when you get hit with a lawsuit, that usually you learn a lesson.
Oh, that's.
And they're requiring it on every deal they do.
That was part of the
Okay.
counter. They did that to me.
You just had that too, huh?
Actually, I didn't have the garbage on there.
Yeah. Like the name, the address,
And.
Info,
so
everything.
But the clients didn't have garbage because they took all their stuff to the dump. So I was like, they don't have garbage. Well, we need to know what services that area.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I can look that up.
Yeah, so anytime you're dealing with Redfin right now, it's, on their listings, they've got them completely filled in, 100%, 100%, every single item. If it's something that they do not get, there's an NA on it.
Okay, gotcha.
So you really, if you're listing a property, you might as well get that on there. Otherwise, you're gonna have to do it later. Because they're requiring it in every deal. All right, charges and assessment. Okay, we usually end on FERPA, so we're doing good. Charges and assessment due after closing. Check the box to indicate whether buyer or seller will pay for charges and assessments due after closing. This provision applies to any local improvement district, capacity or impact charges or other assessments that are levied before closing but become due after closing. Seller is responsible to pay such charges that are due before closing. In addition, if the charge or assessment was recorded on title as an encumbrance, seller also must pay the charge or assessment as the time of closing. If the charge or assessment is levied prior to closing but does not become due until after closing, the parties must agree who will pay for it. For example, an irrigation district imposes an assessment on the property before closing for improvements to the local irrigation system. The assessed amount is due 6 months after closing. The parties must agree in specific term number 13 who will pay that assessment and any similar charges against the property. Charges and assessments are very common. They're the ones that are even due for a condo like we're dealing with now. Those are the monthly charges too, right? So those are designated on your deal. How much is those fees? So we've got right here, charges and assessments levied before but due after closing. Who's gonna pay this? Most of the time buyers are marking this, right? Buyer brokers are writing this, prepaid in full by seller. But what if this condo has a sewer capacity charge and it's newer? They're gonna want the buyer to assume that. So you gotta pay attention to this area, listing brokers. If this is marked, make sure your seller understands that they are gonna be prepaying that at closing.
Well, and then if you don't have a resale certificate, you might not know if there's.
Yeah, you might not even know.
I just had this on a condo where there was, they did a special assessment that was gonna be added to the monthly HOA, but the sellers decided not to have that added. They were just gonna pay for it at the end of the year, which was like $2,200. Not a lot of money, but, so we went under contract. It was prepaid by seller at closing. We get the resale certificate and I was like, oh, you have a balance doing, or what's gonna, oh, we were just gonna pay that at closing, so you're aware that this needs to be paid, right? So then we get to the closing table, wait a second, why are we paying for this? And I was like, you just said you're gonna get that in, well, no, it needs to be added to the monthly amount, we were gonna, no, that's not, so make sure.
They're thinking in their mind, like I'm paying it up to the day of closing.
Exactly, so
Not-
make sure you get clarification if you do see a resale certificate with a special assessment.
Yeah,
And if it says paid by seller, because they're gonna have to pay for it.
and there could be, I mean, sewer capacity charges or updates, or any of those types of things can all fall into that category. But don't be shocked if all of a sudden, I had a client years ago, they go, Eric, we just got this bill, we closed, 4 months ago. It says that we're getting hit with this assessment, it's for sidewalks. They made brand new sidewalks throughout the community. And everyone got an assessment, and we're like, yeah, that's something that, you would be responsible, because they're improving your properties. They've been all brand new sidewalks. So it could be anything.
Yeah, and that's when you're like listing one, make sure you're looking at the minutes, because.
Oh, yeah.
You could have some, maybe it's not showing as a special assessment yet, but they just proposed it in their minutes.
Yeah. So that is today's part 1. We thank you guys so much for making it. We will continue with FERPTA next Wednesday. So we'll continue this form. But thank you guys for making it, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, sometimes I go up on